The phone call came at 7:47 a.m. on a Sunday morning, exactly 24 hours after I had become Mrs. Darnell Thompson. I was still wearing my silk robe, the one my mother had given me as a bridal gift, and my wedding band felt foreign on my finger, a beautiful weight I hadn't yet grown accustomed to. My husband was still sleeping in our hotel suite, his face peaceful against the white pillows, and I remember thinking that this was what happiness looked like. This was what I had waited 31 years to feel. Then my phone buzzed. Before we get into this story, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Mrs. Thompson? The voice was hesitant, professional, but there was something underneath it, something that made my stomach twist before my brain could catch up. This is Derek Williams, the manager at the Azure Room. We hosted your wedding reception last night. I stepped onto the balcony, closing the glass door behind me so I wouldn't wake Darnell. Yes, of course. Is everything okay? Did we leave something behind? There was a pause. A pause that lasted 3 seconds too long. Ma'am, I need you to come to the restaurant today. We reviewed the camera footage again this morning, and you need to see this in person. His voice dropped lower. Come alone. And please, don't tell your husband anything. I stood on that balcony for 11 minutes after the call ended, staring at the city skyline without seeing it. My mind was racing through every possibility, every scenario that could explain those words. Had there been a theft? An accident we hadn't noticed? Had someone gotten hurt? But none of those explanations required secrecy. None of them demanded that I come alone. Don't tell your husband anything. Those 5 words played on repeat in my head like a broken record. I turned and looked through the glass door at Darnell, still sleeping, still peaceful, and I felt the first crack appear in the foundation of everything I thought I knew. We had been together for 4 years. For years of Sunday brunches and late-night conversations. For years of building a life, brick by brick, promise by promise. He had proposed on a rainy Tuesday evening in our apartment, no fancy restaurant, no elaborate setup, just him, on one knee, with tears in his eyes, asking me to spend forever with him. And I had said yes without hesitation because I had never been more certain of anything in my life. But now, standing in that hotel robe with the morning sun warming my face, certainty felt like a stranger. I left a note on the pillow, went to grab us breakfast. Be back soon. I love you. The drive to the Azure Room took 23 minutes, but it felt like hours. Every red light gave my imagination more time to spiral. Every passing car seemed to carry answers I wasn't ready to hear. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached, and I kept telling myself that this was nothing. A misunderstanding. Something easily explained. But my heart knew better. My heart had been whispering warnings for months, and I had refused to listen. Derek Williams was waiting for me at the back entrance of the restaurant. He was a tall man in his 50s, with kind eyes and gray at his temples, and the way he looked at me, with pity, with something close to grief, made my legs feel weak. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Thompson, he said quietly, holding the door open. I debated whether to call you at all. My wife said I should stay out of it, that it wasn't my business. But I have a daughter your age, and if this were her. He shook his head. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't show you. He led me through the empty restaurant, past the tables where my guests had danced and laughed just hours before, past the spot where Darnell and I had shared our first dance as husband and wife. The chairs were still arranged in their reception configuration. Someone had left a program on one of the tables, and I saw our names printed in elegant script, Darnell and Simone. We reached a small office in the back, and Derek closed the door behind us. There was a computer on the desk, the screen already glowing with a paused video feed. The footage is from the storage hallway, he explained, his voice heavy. It's near the emergency exit, where we keep extra supplies. Most guests don't even know it exists. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the mouse. Mrs. Thompson, I need to prepare you. What you're about to see, it's going to be difficult. I wanted to tell him to stop. I wanted to run out of that office and pretend this morning had never happened. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. All I could do was watch as he pressed play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m., right in the middle of our reception, while I was at the head table accepting congratulations from my aunt. The hallway was dimly lit, and for a moment, there was nothing. Just shadows and silence. Then two figures appeared. A man in a tuxedo. A woman in a burgundy dress. They were pressed against the wall, their bodies intertwined, their mouths locked together with an urgency that made my stomach turn. The man's hands were tangled in the woman's hair. The woman's fingers were gripping his jacket, pulling him closer, closer. And then the man turned his head slightly, and I saw his face. Darnell. My husband. The man I had married 24 hours ago. The man who had stood at the altar and promised to love me, honor me, cherish me for the rest of our lives. But that wasn't the worst part. The woman pulled back, laughing at something he whispered in her ear, and I saw her face too. It was my sister. It was Keisha. I don't remember leaving the restaurant. I don't remember driving back to the hotel. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my car in the parking garage, my hands trembling, my chest heaving with sobs I couldn't control. The world had tilted on its axis, and I was falling, falling, falling with nothing to hold on to. My sister. My own sister. Keisha was 3 years younger than me, and for most of my life, I had been her protector. When our father left us, I was the one who held her while she cried. When our mother worked double shifts to keep the lights on, I was the one who made sure Keisha did her homework, ate her dinner, felt safe. I had sacrificed so much for her, turned down opportunities, given up dreams, put my own life on hold, because that's what family did. That's what love meant. And this was how she repaid me. I thought about all the times Keisha had been around Darnell. The family dinners where she laughed a little too hard at his jokes. The way she always found excuses to touch his arm, his shoulder, his hand. The night before my wedding, when she had disappeared from my bachelorette party for over an hour and came back with her lipstick smeared, claiming she had stepped out for fresh air. I had noticed. Of course I had noticed. But I had pushed those thoughts away, buried them under layers of denial and desperate hope, because the alternative was too painful to consider. Now I had no choice but to face it. I walked into the hotel suite at 10:23 a.m. Darnell was awake now, sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. When he saw me, his face lit up with that smile, that beautiful, lying smile, and he stood to wrap his arms around me. "There's my wife," he said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I was starting to worry. "Where'd you go?" I stood rigid in his embrace, my arms hanging at my sides. "I went to the Azure Room." He pulled back, his brow furrowing. "The restaurant? Why? Did we forget something?" I looked into his eyes, those dark brown eyes that I had fallen in love with, that I had trusted completely, and I searched for some sign of guilt, some flicker of shame. But there was nothing. Just confusion. Just the performance of an innocent man. "The manager called me this morning," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. "He wanted me to see the security footage from last night." Something shifted in his expression. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but I caught it. A shadow passing behind his eyes. A tightening of his jaw. Security footage? He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Why would he show you that? What's going on, Simone?" "I saw you, Darnell." The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. "I saw you in the storage hallway. With Keisha." The silence that followed was deafening. Darnell's face went through a rapid transformation, confusion to shock to fear to something that looked almost like relief, as if he had been waiting for this moment, dreading it, but also somehow craving it. He sat down heavily on the bed, his head falling into his hands. "Simone. Don't." My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to rage and scream and make him feel even a fraction of the pain that was tearing through my chest. But all I could do was stand there, broken, watching the man I loved crumble under the weight of his own betrayal. "How long?" I demanded. "How long has this been going on?" He didn't answer. He couldn't even look at me. How long, Darnell? 8 months, he whispered. It started 8 months ago. 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of coming home to me, kissing me, making love to me, planning our wedding with me, all while sneaking around with my sister behind my back. The night before the wedding, I said slowly, piecing together the timeline. When she disappeared from my bachelorette party. She was with you, wasn't she? He nodded, still not meeting my eyes. And last night? On our wedding night? My voice rose to a scream. You couldn't even wait one day? You couldn't give me one single day of believing I was enough for you? It wasn't supposed to happen, he said, finally looking up. His eyes were red, his face wet with tears. We were going to end it. I swear to God, Simone, we had already agreed to end it. But then she came up to me at the reception, and she was crying, and she said she couldn't let me go, and I wasn't thinking. I wasn't. You weren't thinking about me. I finished his sentence with a bitterness that surprised even myself. You weren't thinking about the woman you had just married. The woman you claimed to love. I do love you. He stood up, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Simone, please, you have to believe me. What happened with Keisha, it was a mistake. A terrible mistake. But my feelings for you are real. Everything I said at that altar, I meant it. I want to spend my life with you. I want to build a family with you. Then why? The question tore from my throat like a sob. Why wasn't I enough? He didn't have an answer. Of course he didn't. Because there was no answer that could justify what he had done, no explanation that could make sense of this senseless betrayal. I made him leave the hotel suite. I needed space. I needed air. I needed to process the fact that my entire life had been built on a foundation of lies. But even as Darnell walked out the door, I knew that confronting him was only half the battle. There was still another conversation I needed to have. A conversation I had been dreading since the moment I saw my sister's face on that screen. I called Keisha that afternoon. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. Simone. How's married life treating you, sis? The audacity. The absolute audacity of her asking me that question, as if she hadn't spent my wedding night with my husband's tongue down her throat. We need to talk, I said flatly. Meet me at Mama's house in an hour. There was a pause. Is everything okay? You sound weird. Just be there, Keisha. My mother's house was a small brick home in the neighborhood where Keisha and I had grown up. The porch steps still creaked in the same places, and the smell of lavender still drifted from the garden. It was a place of memories, of safety, of love, and I hated that I was about to taint it with the ugliness of what I knew. Mama was in the kitchen when I arrived, humming an old gospel tune while she washed dishes. She turned when she heard me come in, and her face immediately shifted to concern. Baby, what's wrong? You look like you've been crying. Is Keisha here yet? She just pulled up. Simone, talk to me. What's going on? Before I could answer, the front door opened, and Keisha walked in. She was wearing a yellow sundress, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking every bit the innocent little sister she had always pretended to be. Our eyes met across the living room, and I watched the realization dawn on her face. She knew. In that moment, she knew exactly why I had summoned her here. Simone, she started, her voice trembling. Listen, I can explain. Explain what? Mama looked between us, her confusion growing. What is there to explain? What happened? I turned to face my mother, and the words felt like glass in my mouth. Mama, Keisha has been sleeping with Darnell. For 8 months. Including last night, at my wedding reception. The silence that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Mama's face went through a transformation I will never forget, disbelief, then horror, then a grief so profound it aged her 10 years in 10 seconds. No, she whispered. No, that can't be true. Keisha, tell me that's not true. Keisha was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, her hands clasped together like she was praying. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear I didn't. You didn't mean for it to happen? I exploded. For 8 months? You accidentally fell onto my fiancé's, my husband's. Enough. Mama's voice cut through the room like a knife. She was crying too now, tears streaming silently down her face. She turned to Keisha with an expression I had never seen before, disappointment so deep it bordered on devastation. I raised you better than this, she said quietly. I worked myself to the bone to give you girls a good life, to teach you right from wrong, to show you how to love each other. And this is what you do? Her voice broke. You betray your own sister? Your own blood? Mama, please. Get out. Keisha froze. What? Get out of my house. Mama's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 disappointments. I can't look at you right now. I can't, she turned away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Just go. Keisha left without another word. She didn't look at me as she walked past, didn't try to apologize again or make excuses. She just grabbed her purse and disappeared through the front door, and a part of me, a part I'm not proud of, was glad to see her go. Mama and I sat together on her old floral couch for hours that evening. She held me while I cried, stroking my hair the way she used to when I was a little girl with scraped knees and broken toys. But this wasn't a scraped knee. This wasn't something a kiss and a band-aid could fix. I don't understand, I kept saying. I don't understand how she could do this to me. I gave up so much for her, Mama. I turned down the scholarship to Howard because you needed help taking care of her. I stayed in this city when I wanted to leave because she begged me not to go. I put her first my entire life. I know, baby. Mama's voice was heavy with her own grief. I know you did. And Darnell, my voice caught. I thought he was different, Mama. I thought he was the one. Everyone told me I was lucky to find him. Everyone said we were perfect together. People can hide who they really are for a long time, Mama said softly. And sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us the most, because they know exactly where to aim. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork and pain. I filed for an annulment, citing fraud, because that's what it was, wasn't it? Our entire relationship had been built on lies. Darnell tried to contact me repeatedly, sending texts and voicemails begging for another chance, promising that he had ended things with Keisha for good, swearing that he could change. I blocked his number after the 37th message. Keisha reached out too, though her approach was different. She sent long, rambling emails full of excuses and justifications. She blamed our father for leaving, said it had given her attachment issues. She blamed me for being the perfect one, said she had always felt like she was living in my shadow. She blamed Darnell for pursuing her, said she had tried to resist but he was persistent. Never once did she take full responsibility. Never once did she say, simply and without caveat, I was wrong, and I'm sorry. That's when I realized that some people are incapable of true accountability. Some people will spend their entire lives rearranging facts to cast themselves as victims, never understanding that the greatest growth comes from owning your mistakes. 3 months after my wedding that wasn't, I was sitting in my therapist's office, trying to put words to the emptiness inside me. Dr. Patricia Hayes was a small woman with silver locks and warm brown eyes, and she had a way of asking questions that cut straight through my defenses. What do you miss the most? She asked during one session. About your life before this happened? I thought about it for a long moment. I miss trust, I finally said. I miss being able to believe people when they say they love me. I miss looking at the world without wondering who's going to betray me next. Do you think that trust is gone forever? I don't know. I stared at the ceiling, fighting back tears. Maybe. Maybe it is. Let me ask you something else. Dr. Hayes leaned forward. If you could go back in time, if you could erase everything that happened and return to the morning of your wedding, would you? The question caught me off guard. I opened my mouth to say yes, of course I would. Who wouldn't want to undo the worst day of their life? But something stopped me. No, I heard myself say. No, I wouldn't. Why not? I thought about the woman I had been before Derek Williams made that phone call. She was happy, yes, but her happiness was built on sand. She was in love, yes, but she was in love with an illusion. She trusted the wrong people and ignored the wrong signs and walked through life with her eyes half closed. Because I'd rather know the truth, I said slowly. Even if it hurts. Even if it breaks me. I'd rather know who people really are than spend the rest of my life loving a lie. Recovery wasn't linear. Some days I felt strong, empowered, grateful for the chance to rebuild my life on a foundation of honesty. Other days I couldn't get out of bed, couldn't stop crying, couldn't shake the feeling that I would never be whole again. But slowly, so slowly, I began to heal. I threw myself into my career, earning a promotion I had been too distracted to pursue when I was planning a wedding. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected, friends who showed up with wine and tissues and reminded me that I was worthy of love that didn't come with conditions. I started running in the mornings, pounding the pavement until my lungs burned and my mind cleared, proving to myself that I was capable of things I had never thought possible. And I forgave myself. That was the hardest part, forgiving myself for not seeing the signs, for trusting the wrong people, for believing in a love that was never real. But Dr. Hayes helped me understand that I wasn't foolish for trusting, I was human. I wasn't weak for loving, I was brave. The betrayal wasn't my fault. The only people responsible for that pain were the people who chose to cause it. A year passed. Then too. My relationship with Keisha remained fractured. She had moved to Atlanta, started a new job, began posting on social media about growth and self-improvement. Part of me wondered if she had genuinely changed, if the consequences of her actions had forced her to confront the person she had become. But I wasn't ready to find out. Maybe I never would be. Mama and I grew closer through the ordeal. We had Sunday dinners together, just the two of us, and she told me stories about her own heartbreaks, her own betrayals, her own journey toward healing. I realized that pain was something all women carried, passed down through generations like a bittersweet inheritance, and that surviving it was its own kind of strength. You know what I've learned in all my years? Mama said one evening, as we sat on her porch watching the sunset. People will disappoint you. Even the people you love most. But that doesn't mean love isn't worth having. It just means you have to be careful who you give it to. How do you know? I asked. How do you know who deserves it? She smiled, reaching over to squeeze my hand. You watch what they do, not just what they say. Words are easy, baby. Actions are everything. I met someone new, eventually. His name was David, and he was nothing like Darnell, quieter, gentler, with a patience that seemed infinite. He didn't rush me. He didn't pressure me. He just showed up, consistently and reliably, day after day, proving through his actions that he was exactly who he claimed to be. Our first date lasted 6 hours because neither of us wanted it to end. Our first kiss happened on a rainy Wednesday, underneath an awning outside a bookstore, and it felt like coming home. When I told him about my past, about Darnell, about Keisha, about the wedding that wasn't, he didn't flinch. He didn't judge. He just held my hand and said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. I promise I'll never give you a reason to regret it." And somehow, against all odds, I believed him. Last month, I received a letter from Keisha. It was handwritten, 3 pages long, with no excuses and no justifications, just a raw, honest acknowledgement of everything she had done wrong. "I'm not writing this to ask for your forgiveness," she wrote. "I know I might never deserve that. I'm writing because I need you to know that I understand now. I understand the depth of what I took from you. I understand the trust one shattered, the bond one destroyed, the family I tore apart. I've spent 3 years in therapy trying to figure out why I did what I did, and the truth is, there's no good reason. I was selfish. I was jealous. I was broken in ways I didn't want to admit. But none of that excuses what I did. Nothing ever could. She ended the letter with a simple statement: I hope you're happy, Simone. You deserve to be happy. And if we never speak again, please know that I will spend the rest of my life trying to become the sister you always deserved. I read that letter 5 times, crying harder each time. And then I did something I never thought I would do. I picked up the phone. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's not about pretending the wounds don't exist or forcing yourself to move on before you're ready. Healing is about choosing, every single day, to walk toward the light instead of back into the darkness. It's about recognizing that the people who hurt you don't define you, and that your capacity to survive, to thrive, is greater than you ever imagined. I don't know what my relationship with Keisha will look like in the future. We've started talking again, slowly, carefully, like 2 strangers getting to know each other for the first time. Maybe we'll rebuild something beautiful. Maybe we won't. But I've learned that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. I'm married now, to David, not Darnell. Our wedding was small and intimate, just 30 people in Mama's backyard, with no fancy venues and no elaborate receptions. I walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, and when I looked into David's eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. I saw truth. I saw a man who had nothing to hide. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own storm, I want you to know something. The pain you're feeling right now? It's real, and it's valid, and it's not going to last forever. You will survive this. You will come out stronger. And one day, you'll look back at this moment and realize that it was the beginning of something beautiful, not the end of everything. Don't let the people who betrayed you determine your worth. Don't let their choices define your future. You are so much more than the worst thing that ever happened to you. And remember, sometimes the people who break you are actually setting you free. So let me ask you this: have you ever discovered a truth that destroyed your world but eventually led you to a better life? How did you find the strength to keep going?